moment I saw Mayra cling to him in the dimly lit cafe, whispering desperately, "Please don't think less of me," my heart turned to stone. I'd been shelling out 300 grand a month to keep her comfortable, designer dresses, exclusive apartments, even luxury trips she'd never dreamed of. Yet here she stood, nestled pitifully in another man's embrace, painting me as some kind of monster. Rage simmered beneath my skin, tainted her. She had no issue spending my money on her family, her education, even expensive gifts for friends she barely knew. But now she dared imply that I'd corrupted her innocence. Fine, if Mayra thought I was dirty, there were plenty of other women who'd jump at the chance she'd squandered. Right then, a flash of color caught my eye on other young woman, bold and unapologetic, striding confidently past the cafe in imitation designer, where her glossy hair swayed with each exaggerated step, clearly aiming to catch the eye of someone like me. Without another thought, I turned sharply to my driver, asked her if she needs a sponsor. Within moments, the car door opened, and the girl slid gracefully inside. A sealed perfume filled the interior as she flashed me a knowing smile. "I'm Helen," she said boldly, her eyes filled with calculation rather than innocence. "Heard you're looking for someone new." I studied her, then glanced back one final time at Mayra, whose pleading eyes still lingered on the other man. If she thought she was too pure for my generosity, then perhaps someone more direct. Someone who understood exactly what our arrangement was. Someone like this girl would suit me better. "Drive," I ordered, closing my eyes briefly. I refused to be painted as the villain in Mayra's pathetic little drama. This time, I'd be the one in control. I first saw Mayra on a rainy evening outside an upscale restaurant. She was huddled under a tattered umbrella, her thin white dress soaked, outlining her fragile figure beneath the dim streetlights. I was leaving a business dinner, irritated and exhausted, when our eyes met for a brief, charged moment. She looked away shyly, cheeks flushed, still embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable state. That image haunted me for days. Her innocence drew me in the delicate aura, like porcelain ready to shatter. Soon, our lives intertwined, but not in a traditional romance. I became her silent benefactor, slipping money into her life under various gifted tuition scholarships, extravagant birthday gifts, monthly transfers for family emergencies. Eventually, I didn't bother hiding it. It's 30 grand, 50 grand, finally settling comfortably at $300,000 every month. Each deposit, another layer of ownership I placed on her heart, or so I thought. But Mayra remained elusive forever, just beyond my grasp, always playing hard to get despite eagerly cashing in. She never kissed me without hesitation, never fully surrendered herself emotionally. Her pride always stood firmly between us. Perhaps that's why I kept paying. The chase made me desperate, compelled by the thrill of finally winning her surrender. Now, here I was, $300,000 poorer, watching her cling desperately to another man. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her voice pleading, soft words slipping into the air. "Please don't think less of me." In that instant, something inside me snapped. Was this how she truly felt? That accepting my generosity had tarnished her? A bitter laugh slipped past my lips as I turned away. I had wasted so much on Mayra money, attention, even emotions I refused to acknowledge only for her to portray me as a villain. My pride wouldn't allow it. Scanning the sidewalk, my gaze settled sharply on another woman, younger, bolder, eyes bright with ambition. With practiced ease, she strode confidently down the sidewalk, wrapped in cheap glamour but radiating unapologetic charm. Without hesitation, I waved her over. "What's your name?" I asked coldly, ignoring Mayra's startled gaze in the distance. The girl smiled knowingly, eyes flickering with excitement. "Helen," she said, voice soft and promising. "Perhaps It was time I tried someone who didn't pretend to be innocent. Someone who knew exactly what we were getting into. No pretenses, no games. Helen, would you like to earn easy money? She nodded instantly, and just like that, I decided I was done playing by Mayra's rules. Helen sat across from me in the private lounge, confidently sipping on her cocktail, as if she'd belonged here all her life. Unlike Mayra, who'd always looked slightly out of place despite the lavish dresses and designer jewelry, Helen appeared perfectly comfortable amidst luxury. She knew exactly why she was here, unashamed and unabashed about it. I glanced at the thin folder in front of me. Secretary Lucas had been thorough in his investigation. Helen, 22, a waitress at a nightclub, no family to speak of, no attachments, simple, clean, uncomplicated, exactly what I needed. But still, my mind drifted to Mayra. As if sensing my distraction, Helen leaned forward, catching my eye with an inviting smile. Something wrong, Steve? No, I lied smoothly. Reviewing your background. She laughed softly, the sound practiced, yet undeniably appealing. Relax, I'm exactly as advertised. No hidden dramas, no secret crushes. It's just someone who appreciates what you offer. I smirked at her boldness, wondering briefly if this was the kind of bluntness I'd been missing in my arrangement with Mayra. My phone buzzed on the table, Mayra's name flashing across the screen. Irritation tightened my chest, expecting someone important. Helen asked casually, swirling her drink. I shook my head, ignoring Mayra's call. Nobody that matters. Helen's eyes glinted knowingly, clearly pleased by my dismissal. Good, she murmured, moving closer, her hand gently brushing mine. Because I'm not great at sharing. Despite her openness, my mood darkened. Had Mayra ever been this forward with me? Never. I'd always chased her, waiting patiently, playing along with her constant excuses, studies, exams, family emergencies. Yet I indulged her, believing she genuinely needed me. I picked up the phone, unable to resist curiosity, reading Mayra's text. Can we talk? I know you're angry, but it's not what you think. My fingers hovered over the keypad. Talk, now, okay? After humiliating me in front of someone else, after letting another man console her. Kay, I couldn't understand her. Nerve. I typed a reply. No, but my thumb hovered uncertainly before finally sending it. Helen tilted her head, eyes sharp. Your girlfriend. I gave a dry laugh. No, not anymore. Helen smiled knowingly, leaning closer. Then, let's toast to fresh starts. Her confidence was refreshing, yet part of me hesitated. Could it really be this easy jest discard? Mayra, like she'd been nothing more than another transaction. My thoughts were interrupted when my secretary entered discreetly, handing me a file. Sir, urgent update, she murmured quietly. I opened the file and froze. It was filled with photographs. Mayra, smiling warmly, arm in arm with a younger man at various locations around the city. Each picture seemed intimate, comfortable. It's the same man she'd whispered to in the cafe. A painful realization washed over me. She'd never shown me this side relaxed, carefree. I'd been too busy paying bills and showering her with expensive things, mistaking her polite acceptance for affection. Helen noticed the shift in my expression. Bad news. Tossed the folder aside, trying to hide my discomfort. Nothing worth my time. But Helen wasn't easily fooled. You seem bothered? Hesitated, wanting to confide, yet ashamed of my vulnerability. She was using me. Helen laughed lightly, as if it was obvious. Weren't you using her, too? Stared at her, surprised by her blunt honesty. Maybe I had been, but it didn't feel that way. Mayra had seemed different, special. She had tricked me into believing I was different too. Helen leaned closer, whispering gently, Forget her. You have me now. I looked at her carefully, sensing an easy truth behind her seductive smile. Helen was straightforward, transparent, Mayra, by contrast, had always hidden her intentions, leaving me guessing. Maybe that mystery was exactly why I'd become obsessed, just as Helen leaned in. The phone vibrated again, Mayra's name taunting me with irritation. I answered abruptly. "What is it, Mayra?" Silence, then a faint, wavering voice. "Steve, you misunderstood." My chest tightened. I think I understood perfectly. "Tell me, how's your boyfriend?" She hesitated. "He's not my eye," interrupted harshly. "Enough. I saw the photos." Her voice grew shaky. "You don't get it. It's helping me." My patience snapped. "Helping you with what, exactly? Spending my money, or helping you feel less tainted?" Silence followed, deafening and tense. Mayra finally spoke, voice trembling. "Do you really think I'm that kind of person?" I clenched the phone tighter, bitterness seeping through my tone. "I don't know what kind of person you are anymore, Mayra." She hesitated, breathing unevenly. "Steve, can we meet? Just give me a chance to explain." I looked over at Helen, who watched curiously. I could easily hang up and dive into something easier, simpler. Instead, I found myself saying, "Fine, 1 hour. Milano." Helen's eyebrow rose in surprise, but she wisely stayed silent, taking another slow sip. Later, Mayra arrived, her face pale, eyes redrimmed from crying. My heart twisted painfully. Yet I kept my expression cold. "What do you want?" Mayra took a shaky breath. "That man, his name is Richard. He's helping me repay my family's debt." "Your family?" I laughed bitterly. "My money wasn't enough." She bit her lip, shaking her head. "That's exactly the problem, Steve. You only see it as money. That's not what I needed." Anger flared again, raw and painful. "You didn't mind the money when you accepted it every month." Her lips quivered. "You offered, accepted. You knew the situation." I narrowed my eyes, voice dripping with scorn. "But you still told him I tainted you." Mayra flinched, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean it that way." "Okay, then how did you mean it?" My voice lowered, dangerously. "'Cause from here, it looks like you're ashamed of what we had." Her voice dropped, soft and resigned. I wanted to be someone who deserved you, not just someone you bought." The words struck harder than I'd expected. Had I misread everything so completely? She looked at me desperately. "Steve, I never meant to hurt you. Never thought you'd find out this way." I stared at her, heart aching, but pride refusing to yield. "It's too late, Mayra." She tried again, tears streaming silently down her face. "Please, give me another chance." I shook my head slowly, coldness masking my pain. "No, we're done." I stood, dropping money on the table, making it clear this meeting was over. Turning away, I didn't allow myself another glance. Didn't dare acknowledge the hurt in her eyes, knowing it might break me. Instead, I returned to Helen, determined to erase Mayra from my heart, even if deep down I knew it was impossible. This wasn't the clean break I'd wanted. It was a messy fracture, leaving jagged wounds that might never heal. But now, betrayal had stripped away all illusions. My life wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. And Mayra wasn't the only one left feeling tainted. In the days after confronting Mayra, my thoughts became a battlefield, torn between anger and aching doubt. Despite the ease with which Helen filled my bed, something felt profoundly missing. Helen's presence offered superficial comfort, an escape into the uncomplicated life I thought I craved. But her laughter lacked depth. Her touches felt transactional, merely business, dressed up as intimacy. I'd sit in my office, staring blankly through expansive windows that once symbolized my success, now reflecting only emptiness. The sprawling city below seemed gray and lifeless, the excitement of wealth now hollow. But strange how quickly satisfaction could turn sour when emotions crept in. It had always been simple before money exchanged for companionship, clear-cut arrangements, no strings attached. Mayra had shattered that simplicity. Each night, I replayed Mayra's desperate voice echoing inside my head. I never meant to hurt you. Had she really meant it? Was she truly innocent? Or was this just another manipulative trick? Another layer of her carefully crafted facade? I tossed restlessly, unable to shake off the image of her tear-stained face, her trembling voice insisting she'd never betrayed me. Helen noticed my distraction. She wasn't naive. She could read men well. Leaning against my chest one evening, she whispered softly, "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" I stiffened slightly, irritated by how transparent my feelings were. "Does it matter?" She sighed, sitting up gracefully, eyes searching mine. "I thought we agreed on no complications. Do you really miss her, or just hate losing control?" That word control pierced sharply. It wasn't just about losing control. It was about trust. Mayra had been different, or at least I had convinced myself she was. Now, doubt infected every memory. Had her warmth been genuine? Had her shy smiles hidden manipulation? Had I truly misunderstood everything? I brushed Helen's hair back absently, offering her a forced smile. "It's not about her. It's just complicated." But Helen wasn't convinced, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Is it because it seems pretty straightforward? She gave her everything, and she still chose someone else." That stung, even if she was right. But there was more to it, something rawer, deeper. Mayra had become more than a transaction. She had slipped through the cracks, making me forget our arrangement was supposed to be impersonal. One rainy afternoon, unable to escape my restless thoughts, I found myself parked across from Mayra's university, staring through the windshield. As students hurried past, umbrellas bouncing in a kaleidoscope of colors, I felt foolish. What was I hoping to see? Proof that she'd moved on? Or confirmation she missed me too? Then I saw her, walking alone beneath a faded umbrella, thin cardigan pulled tightly around her slender shoulders. Rain soaked her shoes, making her steps slow and cautious. She paused, glanced around nervously, as though sensing my presence, before shaking her head softly and continuing on. My heart clenched painfully. She looked tired, vulnerable, so different from the vibrant girl who had once shyly smiled as I showered her with lavish gifts. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe my anger had blinded me to her truth. The idea was unsettling. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Helen. I stared at the screen for a long moment before finally picking up. "Steve, where are you?" Her voice was gentle, yet probing. "Out," I replied curtly, reluctant to reveal my weakness. A short pause. "Come home. I'll distract you." The offer should have excited me, yet I felt nothing. Numbness had replaced desire. I had become trapped in memories of Mayra, her fleeting touches, hesitant glances, laughter that I'd never understood how much I treasured until they vanished. That night, insomnia plagued me, thoughts circling relentlessly. I wandered downstairs to the balcony, lighting a cigarette in the cool air. Smoke swirled upward, twisting in ghostly tendrils under the moonlight. Helen was fast asleep upstairs, content with everything I'd offered her: security, luxury, a chance at a better life. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd made a mistake. My phone buzzed suddenly, the screen illuminating Mayra's name. Once. Again. Surprised, I picked up quickly, heart hammering. "Hello?" Silence stretched, heavy and uncertain. Finally, Mayra spoke, voice quiet, strained. "I just wanted to say goodbye." I frowned, heart jolting. "Mayra," she interrupted softly. "You were right. You deserved better. I shouldn't have made you feel ashamed." The resignation in her voice tore at me, opening wounds I'd barely patched. "Why call now?" asked, voice colder than intended. She laughed bitterly, soft and humorless. "'Cause You blocked me everywhere else. Steve, I just wanted you to know I never lied to you about how I felt. My throat tightened. Then why were you with him? She paused, voice dropping lower. I owed him. My mother was hospitalized, and he offered money when I couldn't ask you again. He misunderstood things, assumed the worst about us. I never expected. You'd overhear. My fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles turning white. The pieces clicked painfully into place. My pride had blinded me, and now regret burned like acid. But it doesn't matter now, she whispered, voice breaking. You've moved on. Before I could respond, she hung up, leaving me staring helplessly at the silent phone, consumed by regret. Was this the price of my pride, losing the one person who'd begun to mean something genuine? Suddenly, the emptiness around me felt overwhelming. I'd chosen Helen, the simpler, clearer option. Yet my soul ached desperately for Mayra. I finally understood the cost of my impulsive anger. The money, the power, the control, they were worthless without her quiet, sincere warmth. For days afterward, I felt hollow, lost in endless loops of memories and missed chances. Helen's attempts at intimacy left me colder each time, guilt gnawing at my conscience. My arrangement with Mayra was never perfect, but at least it had felt real. One evening, unable to resist any longer, I drove to Mayra's apartment, determined to fix my mistake. The lights were off. Silence greeted me as I stood in front of her door, heart racing. Gathering my courage, I knocked sharply. No answer. Heart sinking, I realized she truly might have moved on. Feet washed over me as I turned to leave, only to freeze when the door creaked open, slightly behind me. Steve. Mayra stood there, thin pajamas hanging loosely on her slender frame. Eyes wide with surprise, then quickly filling with tears. What are you doing here? My throat tightened painfully. I don't know, I whispered honestly. I just know I made a mistake. She hesitated, biting her lip nervously, then stepped back, silently allowing me inside. As I crossed the threshold, I realized I was no longer in control for the first time. I didn't care. Maybe it was too late, or maybe this was just the beginning of something even more complicated. Either way, I knew I couldn't walk away. Stepping inside Mayra's small apartment felt surreal. It wasn't the luxurious penthouse I had set her up in before. It was modest, cluttered, and painfully humble. The stark contrast between her simple surroundings and the lavish lifestyle I had once offered pierced me with a sense of guilt. Mayra lowered her gaze, nervously tugging at the edges of her sleeves as I entered, quietly closing the door behind me. Why are you really here, Steve? Her voice trembled softly, laden with confusion and guarded hope. I hesitated, heart pounding painfully in my chest. Pride still fought to hold my words back, but something deeper pushed them forward anyway. I came because I realized I might have misunderstood. She lifted her eyes, cautiously, searching mine for sincerity. Its quiet vulnerability on her face reminded me sharply of why I'd fallen so deeply, so dangerously for her, in the simple surroundings of her modest apartment. Mayra appeared even more delicate, beautifully authentic, without the trappings of luxury. You never believed me before, she said quietly, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Why should I trust you now? I swallowed hard, stepping closer, resisting the urge to reach out. Because this time, I'm asking. Her gaze softened briefly, the tension easing slightly from her shoulders. But before either of us could speak further, my phone buzzed aggressively, cutting through our fragile silence. Irritated, I glanced at the screen. Helen's name boldly displayed. I ignored it, but Mayra noticed, her expression darkening again. It's her, isn't it? Her voice broke slightly, eyes flickering with hurt. I knew you moved on, but seeing you here, I thought. It's not like that, I interrupted quickly. Helen means nothing. Mayra laughed bitterly, shaking her head. How many times have you said that about someone else, Steve? How many other girls like me have you treated this way? I felt my anger rising again, pride resisting her accusations. But deep down, I knew she was right. She had every reason not to trust me. Our arrangement had always been transactional, and now I was desperately trying to rewrite history, just as I reached for her hand. Desperate to convince her of my sincerity, my phone rang again, this time, insistently loud. Annoyed, I answered without checking. "What is it?" My tone was harsh, impatient. Helen's voice was unusually tense. "You need to see something. Check your messages." Cold dread settled deep inside my chest. "Not now, Helen. No." "Steve," she insisted sharply, her voice carrying urgency. "You really should look at this." Mayra stepped back slightly, crossing her arms protectively. Hesitantly, I opened the message. My heart sank instantly. Photographs filled the screen, Mayra, and the man from the cafe, laughing together, sharing quiet, intimate moments. But this time, the images went further, clearly implying something deeper. My stomach churned violently. "Steve." Helen's voice cut through the haze. "I tried to warn you." I ended the call abruptly, heart racing in anger, betrayal burning, fresh once again. I looked up slowly, meeting Mayra's suddenly panicked gaze. "You lied again," I accused bitterly, voice thick with betrayal. Mayra stepped closer, eyes wide with shock. "What do you mean?" I shoved the phone toward her, anger and disappointment warring inside me, still claiming innocence. Her eyes widened as she recognized the photos, mouth falling open in disbelief. "Steve, it's not like that. He's just a friend." I laughed harshly, pulling back. "Friends, is that what you call this now?" She shook her head frantically. "Please, you have to believe me. These are taken completely out of context." "I want to," I admitted, painfully, my voice barely steady. "But how can I?" She stared desperately at me, tears rolling down her face freely now. "Someone is trying to ruin me, to ruin us. Please, Steve, trust me." I hesitated, torn between old suspicions and a desperate need to believe her. The past betrayal was fresh in my mind, and these photos reinforced every insecurity she'd ever made me feel. Mayra reached out, gripping my arm tightly, voice trembling. "I've never lied to you about this. Never." I stared into her pleading eyes, wavering, uncertain if I could trust my own judgment. Suddenly, my phone vibrated again, another message. A simple, anonymous text. "You deserve to know everything about Mayra. She's playing you both." Anger surged again, blinding me to logic. "You've been lying all along," I hissed, pulling away. All those tears, all those innocent words, it was all an act, wasn't it? "Steve, no?" She grabbed my arm desperately, sobbing openly now. "You're making a mistake." "Am I?" shouted, voice cracking with fury. "You had everything. I gave you everything, and you threw it away. And for what?" She stared at me, face pale, eyes filled with grief. "You still don't believe me?" I took a deep, painful breath, forcing myself to step away. "I can't. Not anymore." Leaving Mayra crying quietly behind me, I stormed out, heartbreaking under the weight of betrayal I couldn't deny. Walking into the night, I clenched, my fists determined never to be fooled again. Yet somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered doubtfully, had I just made the worst mistake of my life? Days passed, heavy and suffocating, filled with sleepless nights and endless thoughts, looping back to Mayra. Helen attempted to soothe me with her practiced charm, but nothing penetrated the deep numbness spreading inside me. The betrayal felt undeniable. Those photos, Mara's pleading voice, the anonymous message. Yet something about it nagged at the edge of my consciousness. It felt too neat, too perfectly timed to ruin us. Unable to shake the doubt, I ordered Lucas to find out who sent those pictures. After days of digging, he finally uncovered a lead. It's someone from Mayra's past. Lucas reported grimly, handing me another file. His name's Adam. I stared at the photograph, a smug-faced man in his late 20s, dressed cheaply but attempting luxury. Something about his arrogant grin unsettled me. What does he want? I asked sharply. Lucas hesitated, then sighed. Deeply. Money, jealousy, revenge. My heart sank further. Did Mayra owe him? No, Lucas said quietly. She rejected him years ago. Apparently, he's been stalking her since, determined to ruin any relationship she forms. Suddenly, Mayra's terrified denials echoed in my mind. The anonymous texts, the compromising photos, all began making a twisted sort of sense. Had I fallen right into Adam's trap? My throat tightened painfully. Where is Mayra now? Lucas hesitated, before replying softly. She's gone. Left the university 2 days ago. Dropped out completely. My heart dropped instantly. It's gone. The news hit me harder than expected. Where did she go? No one knows, Lucas admitted quietly. She emptied her accounts and disappeared. Panic surged, raw and uncontrollable. I'd driven her away. I'd forced her out, humiliated and broken. I stood abruptly, feeling sick with guilt and regret. Find her, whatever it takes. He nodded immediately, leaving me alone with my tortured thoughts. Days blurred into weeks as I searched desperately, consumed by the realization that I'd allowed insecurity and pride to blind me completely. My relationship with Mayra had started transactional, but somewhere along the way, she'd quietly become everything. Then one rainy evening, a message arrived, brief anonymous text containing only an address. I wasted no time, driving recklessly through the city, anxiety clawing at my chest as I arrived at a worn-down apartment building. Climbing the stairs, heart racing, I knocked frantically on the door of apartment 204. It swung open slowly, revealing Mayra, thinner and paler than before, her eyes tired but widened in shock at seeing me. Steve. Her voice was faint, disbelieving. Relief crashed through me painfully. Mayra, I've been looking everywhere for you. She backed away slightly, unsure. Why are you here? You made it clear you didn't want me anymore. I stepped inside, cautiously, closing the door behind me. I was wrong. Mayra, I know the truth now. She folded her arms protectively, cautious, yet unable to conceal a flicker of hope. What truth, Adam? I replied simply, watching as her eyes widened, then filled with dread. He set us up. He sent those photos. It was never you. Tears instantly flooded her eyes, relief mixed with fresh pain. She covered her mouth, shaking her head in disbelief. I tried to tell you. I tried so many times. Guilt knotted my chest tighter. I was too stubborn to listen. She looked away, voice breaking softly. It doesn't matter now. It matters, I insisted firmly, stepping closer, because losing you showed me something. You were never just another transaction, Mayra. Somewhere along the way, it became real. She flinched slightly, disbelief still clouding her eyes. Okay, how can I trust you again? You don't have to, not yet, I admitted painfully. Just give me the chance to prove myself, please. She hesitated, conflict playing openly on her face. Steve, you destroyed me. I had nowhere to go. I thought my life was over. Pain ripped through me hearing her confession. I never wanted that. God, Mayra, I would have never hurt you intentionally. She looked down, fighting tears. But you did. I know, I said gently, daring to reach out and touch her hand softly. But let me fix it, whatever it takes. Silence stretched between us, heavy and uncertain, filled only by the faint pattering of rain against the window. Finally, she whispered softly, I wanted to hate you, but I can't. Relief nearly shattered me. My voice cracked, heavy with sincerity. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for it. She finally looked at me, eyes red, but gaze steadier. Can you promise me something? Anything, I said without hesitation. She took a shaky breath. No more games, no more misunderstandings, just honesty. I promise, I whispered urgently, gently, cupping her face. Only honesty, Mayra. Slowly, she relaxed into my touch, eyes closing briefly. For the first time in weeks, hope blossomed tentatively between us. But just as I leaned closer, footsteps echoed harshly in the hallway. A loud knock rattled the door. Open up, Mayra. I know he's in there. Mayra froze instantly, panic flooding her expression. It's Adam, she whispered fearfully. Anger surged violently. And I opened the door sharply, confronting the man who'd torn our lives apart. Adam stood arrogantly, face twisted into an ugly smirk. Look who's here, he sneered. The rich man who thought he could buy love. Fists clenched, fury barely restrained. You almost destroyed her life. Adam laughed mockingly. She rejected me, chose someone like you instead. Thought she'd live happily ever after with your money well. Look at her now. Mayra stepped forward shakily, anger overcoming her fear. Why won't you leave me alone? You've ruined enough. Adam sneered viciously. You ruined me first. You embarrassed me. I stepped protectively in front of her, voice dangerously low. Leave? Now. He stepped forward, threateningly. Or what? You'll ruin me too. I'm already ruined. Suddenly, Mayra's hand gripped mine tightly, surprising both of us. She glared defiantly at Adam. We're done being afraid of you. Adam hesitated, momentarily caught off guard, then scoffed bitterly. Fine. Keep playing pretend. See how long this lasts. He stormed off, leaving us alone in tense silence. Mayra trembled slightly beside me, and I turned quickly, pulling her close protectively. She melted into me, sobbing quietly against my chest. I'm so tired of being afraid, I tightened, my embrace gently, whispering soothingly into her hair. Never again. I'll protect you from now on. She lifted her face slowly, searching my gaze desperately. Can we really fix this? I stroked her tear-streaked cheek tenderly. Together, we can fix anything, okay? And as our lips finally met, softly at first, then passionately, I felt certainty bloom within me. Despite all the pain, confusion, and mistakes, we'd found clarity in each other's arms. Our arrangement had begun with money, but in the end, it had led us somewhere priceless. Now, holding Mayra, feeling her heartbeat steady against mine, I knew I'd never risk losing her again. The journey had been painful, but it was worth it because, for the first time, it was real. Standing in the dimly lit room with Mayra held tight in my arms, I realized for the first time what I'd truly been searching for. It wasn't control or even desire, it was trust. And as her slender fingers clenched tightly around my shirt, her quiet breaths steadying, I vowed silently that I'd never let suspicion or pride push us apart again. She finally pulled away gently, eyes still shimmering but calmer now, as if the storm inside her was easing at last. Steve, she whispered softly, voice hesitant. Are we really okay now? I brushed her cheek softly, my thumb grazing gently along her jawline, her skin warm beneath my touch. Yes, I said honestly, quietly. As long as you're here, I'm okay. She smiled faintly, though her eyes remained troubled. I wish it was that simple. Why isn't it? I asked, heart quickening uneasily. She looked down, biting her lip. Because Adam won't stop. He knows how to hurt me, how to hurt us. My jaw tightened with fresh anger. Adam had manipulated everything, distorted reality, made us doubt each other. Okay? Now he threatened the very fragile bond we'd just begun rebuilding. The thought of losing her again terrified me. My voice dropped, firm but gentle. Then I'll deal with him. She shook her head worriedly. No, Steve. He's dangerous. You don't understand how desperate he is. I don't care, I insisted fiercely, gripping her shoulders gently. He won't touch you again. Mayra looked up into my eyes, fear mixed with tenderness. I trust you, but promise me you'll be careful. I promise, I replied without hesitation, pulling her close again, hailing deeply to memorize the scent of her hair, a comforting familiarity I had missed terribly. But later, as I returned home, uncertainty lingered. Mayra had warned me clearly, and while my pride wanted to dismiss Adam as just another jealous man, something deep inside whispered caution. Adam was driven by resentment, envy, and humiliation, in predictable combination. My fears were confirmed faster than expected. 2 days later, as I left my office late at night, an anonymous text vibrated through my phone. I warned you once, leave Mayra alone, or you'll regret it. Heart hammering, I scanned the street, shadows looming ominously. Instinctively, I hurried toward my car, feeling eyes watching my every step. Adam was making his move, and I knew instantly Mayra was also at risk. Panic surged as I dialed her number frantically. She answered sleepily, unaware of the brewing storm. Steve, what's wrong? Need to leave your apartment right now. Go somewhere safe, I urged sharply, voice edged with urgency. Fear immediately colored her voice. What's happening? I'll explain later, I promised. Just leave. Now. She didn't argue, trust implicit in her quick agreement. Okay. Relieved, I hung up, immediately racing toward her apartment. I knew Adam wouldn't stop at threats. He intended real harm. And it terrified me how quickly he was escalating. Arriving breathlessly, I found Mayra outside her building, huddled anxiously under a streetlight. She ran toward me, eyes wide with terror. Steve, someone broke into my apartment. My blood chilled instantly. Are you hurt? No, I wasn't home, she whispered, voice trembling. But it was Adam. I know it. Guilt surged painfully through me. This was my fault. My pride, my jealousy, they had triggered this chaos. Wrapping an arm tightly around her, I led her quickly to my car. You're staying with me from now on. I won't risk your safety again. She nodded, holding tightly onto me as we drove silently to my villa. Her quiet sniffles broke my heart. Each sound a bitter reminder of the price we'd paid for my foolish pride. Inside, she curled up beside me, exhausted, yet restless. I gently brushed my fingers through her hair, feeling helpless. I won't let anything happen to you again. She looked up, her eyes vulnerable, yet determined. I believe you. The next morning, security footage from Mayra's apartment building confirmed Adam as the intruder. The police became involved, quickly tracking him down, arresting him at a motel on the edge of town. But even knowing he was gone didn't fully ease the tension lingering between Mayra and me. Over breakfast, she finally broke the silence. Steve, maybe you should let me go. My heart dropped instantly, panic gripping me. Why would you say that? Her voice cracked slightly. Because I brought all this chaos into your life. I don't deserve you. You didn't, I countered fiercely. None of this is your fault. She shook her head sadly. But I made you doubt everything. I caused your pain. How can we ever move forward? Reaching across the table, I gently took her hand in mine, squeezing softly. I chose to misunderstand. I let jealousy and suspicion control me. But losing you was the worst mistake of my life. Don't punish me by leaving again. Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but a gentle smile tugged at her lips. I don't want to leave. Relief washed through me. Then stay. Let's start again. No conditions, no doubts, just us. She hesitated, then finally nodded, eyes locked firmly onto mine. Then let's do this right. In that quiet moment, the shadows of betrayal finally lifted. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was clear. For the first time, Mayra and I saw each other clearly, our vulnerabilities, fears, and hopes laid bare without pretenses. The transaction had faded, replaced by something stronger and infinitely more delicate: trust. But just as the warmth returned to our fragile peace, another text appeared on my phone, anonymous, brief, chilling. Did you think Adam was acting alone? Think again. My fingers tightened on the device, dread washing over me. I glanced toward Mayra, laughter brightening her face again, blissfully unaware. Suddenly, the world around us darkened. We weren't safe yet. Someone else, someone unseen, was still manipulating our lives, holding Mayra protectively against me. I hid the phone, refusing to let panic overwhelm us yet again. No matter who tried to come between us now, I was ready. I'd learned from my mistakes. This time, whoever dared threaten what I'd fought so hard to reclaim would face consequences far worse than they could ever imagine. And as Mayra leaned softly against my shoulder, eyes fluttering closed in peaceful ignorance, I silently promised myself that I'd pay any price, fight any battle, to keep her safe. Our journey had already proven love wasn't easily bought. It was earned painfully, and I was finally prepared to protect each at any cost.